The goal was to prevent homeless from sleeping under this bridge. Instead, it backlashed with outrage from the town.
Armrests in the middle of benches to large rocks added underneath bridges. Homeless advocates call these designs hostile architecture or anti-homeless.
In London and Paris, you see spikes on windowsills. In DC, a curved bench.
Hostile architecture is when cities put features in the architecture to try to keep homeless people away.
Spikes that would hurt people seemed like a bad idea.
I've talked about homelessness in multiple videos now, and I didn't plan on covering it again, especially so soon since the last one, which talked about Finland and its homeless issues. The one before that talked about Germany and its homeless issues. The interesting bit about both of those, though, is that they both were about homelessness, but more about ways and ideas that they were implementing in order to decrease the problem. In this implementation, it's the US's turn, but for some reason, it doesn't come off as compassionate. Cash Jordan is a real estate guy based out of New York City. I've been a loyal supporter of his channel for at least 3 years. About a week ago, or a week or so ago, he dropped a video on anti-homelessness, which seems to be doing extremely well. And upon watching it, I had to cover this topic at least one more time, at least once again. Let's take a look at it and see what Cash has to say about the situation.
So this looks like a metal covering for the subway vent, which is underneath it. At first I thought it was a bench, but you can really only sit on this corner of it. You'll notice that the top of this is incredibly uneven, and then there's these raised ridges which are on all 5 of them. And what happens if you try to lay down on it? Is that even possible? Oh, that is like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced. This ridge right here is going into my spine, and that's on purpose, and this is called hostile architecture.
Hostile architecture. It's as if the city thinks that the people who have fell into the misfortune of being homeless are some kind of infestation, and that they need to create some sort of deterrence to rid the city streets of the homelessness presence. Did you know that in the United States, there are about 500,000 people that are experiencing homelessness on any given night? It's a staggering number, but what's worse is that instead of addressing the issue head on with compassion and solutions, many cities have taken sort of a different approach, and they're almost criminalizing homelessness.
Critics of hostile architecture say that usually these types of installations are cruel and unnecessary because they target the needy. Subway benches that serve no purpose, a train station designed to make you go crazy, and several parks that look nice but were designed to be so uncomfortable that you'll leave after 5 or 10 minutes, and they're all here in New York. Hostile or defensive architecture consists of public installations like this, which are designed to do one thing while preventing another thing. In the wintertime, when it's cold out, someone with nowhere to go might want to use an area like this to help keep warm, because warm air comes out of here. When I found out what these were, it made me pretty uncomfortable to realize that they were specifically designed to stop people who have nothing from staying warm in the wintertime.
So imagine this. You're in a city where sleeping in public spaces or maybe panhandling for food is actually looked at as criminal. Imagine wintertime. Let's just say in New York City, where merely utilizing something like warmer air rising from the streets below, which no one owns, by the way, to stay warm for just a little while, being ripped away from you because in someone else's eyes, you just shouldn't be there. Yeah, that's the reality for many homeless individuals in this city and throughout the U.S. Instead of being offered help, they're hit with fines or even arrested for basic survival activities like sleeping in a public park. It's like punishing people just for being in a tough spot. Like, how does this make any sense at all? Now, I don't remember seeing any of this when I was in New York City a few years ago, but then again, hostile architecture would have been the furthest thing from my mind visiting New York City for the first time. But I'm kind of wondering where this all started.
Sometimes when cities build stuff like this, people find out and get really upset. And that's what happened 2 years ago when the city started introducing hostile architecture to the subway system.
So I visited New York City 3 years ago. So they maybe started this sometime within the next year after I had visited.
A couple of years ago, riders noticed that the benches in this very same platform were suddenly removed. And as you can imagine, people were not happy about that. Not only because of how cruel it might seem towards certain individuals, but also because the elderly, people who are pregnant, there's other people that need benches in the subway too.
You can tell that it's sort of a half thought because, of that thing right there. They took it away without considering the disabled, the people who may be pregnant, the people who may be older, without considering any of them. They took away the seating accommodation for everyone because they were only thinking of making it as uncomfortable as possible for the homeless.
Some people even suggested the city had violated the Americans with Disabilities Act by removing the benches. But a year earlier, the city had removed all of the seat backs from the benches on a subway station just a couple blocks south of this one. The city claims that once they did that, they saw a reduction in the number of people loitering on the platform. I'm noticing that this is a trend because look at all the people standing with nowhere to sit. It's important to understand that this is exposing the dark side of this type of architecture.
Dark side of that kind of architecture. That's exactly the perfect way to put it. The sad truth is there's a lack of understanding about the root cause of homelessness, mental health issues, lack of affordable housing, economic hardships, and those are major contributors. And also, in my opinion, there's a lack of compassionate motivation to even put it high up on the list of priorities. Instead of investing in support systems, some places invest in policies and shit that push homeless individuals further into the margins of society. Let's contrast this with what we know about Germany. In Germany, there's a housing-first approach, providing stable housing as a priority, which has significantly reduced homelessness. The video I made specifically about Berlin's homeless problem, they were making like pods and stuff to kind of temporarily give people some kind of shelter from the cold in the winter and maybe even the heat in the summer. I can't remember if they were used in the summer, but they were giving them shelter nonetheless. But that ain't it. In most other cases, they were giving them full-on hotels, providing them full hotels with services. And then in Finland, their housing first model coupled with support services has shown incredible success in tackling this issue. We saw this in my video. The numbers and the results were positive. Maybe go check out the video. The point is that these countries seem to prioritize empathy as much as they can. And although not perfect, practical solutions. A far cry from the scooch, get away from here kind of approach that's you see here in this video.
It gets pretty cold in the wintertime, and the subway is a place where needy New Yorkers go when they have nowhere else to go so that they don't freeze. And yes, the city has shelters, but they have a rather poor reputation. And because of New York's asylum crisis, the shelter system's already maxed out. And since the shelters are perceived as being dangerous, it makes tons of sense that people would rather take their chances in a place like this.
So the shelters are overpacked because of the migrant crisis that's currently going on too. Maybe I'll cover that in another video. That's just another issue that does not help this situation at all. As you heard Cash say, people would rather take their chances on the streets than stay in these shelters that are packed in and probably a little bit dangerous at this point, huh?
Removing subway benches doesn't do anything to make people less homeless. They're still homeless, even if you remove the benches, and they've still got nowhere to go. This is called the Moynihan Trail, and it is the newest train station in New York City. Building it cost over $1 billion, and it was completed just a couple of years ago.
So this train station was built a couple of years ago, cost over $1 billion, and it seems, I think he's about to tell us, that they have, by default, in the beginning of its life, implemented this hostile architecture kind of idea. So I can't wait to see what this looks like.
Do you see the problem? There's no seats. And that's why every single person in this $1 billion terminal is standing. And it's a train station. The only thing...
A full-on train station, brand new train station, has 0 seats. That probably wouldn't affect someone like me as much, but a train station that you would expect to have places for people who are commuting and traveling to rest, it doesn't have it. So this looks so much to me like just in case the homeless try to take up lodge here and, loiter and be around, we're not going to put any seats for them to sit at or lie at. Oh, the other hundreds of thousands of people that are going to suffer, yeah, they can deal with it. We don't want homeless around here.
Not a seat in the whole place. Do you think they should put some benches in here so people have a place to sit?
That's a great idea. They have those lounges over there, but that's for people that have tickets.
Yeah, you got to pay.
And more than likely, the homeless ain't trying to pay to have somewhere to linger and lounge and lie down, because they're either going to end up losing their money by being kicked out, or they don't have the money.
People just plop their stuff down on the floor. And if you're wondering why nobody's trying to sit on the floor, that's because security will find you and make you stand up. And to be fair...
Wow. If you sit on the floor, here in Germany, people sit on the floors all the time. Even if all the seats are taken up, people will sit on the floor. They don't mind it. I've never seen anyone here that minds, plopping down on the floor when they just need to take a tiny little break. There, security will ask you to stand up. They will ask you to stand. I wonder what happens if you're just like, oh, I'm hurt. I'm tired. I don't want to stand up right now. I'm waiting on my train. I wonder if it gets even more hostile than the architecture.
The way to answer that is to go across the street to the ugliest building in town, which is also a train station. It's the same deal, 1 hour limit, and you got to have a ticket to get into the waiting area.
Wow. That same situation. This is the older train station, but they've got their stuff figured out too. They're going to make you pay, and you're limited on the amount of time you can be in the waiting area where people are most likely to be sitting at. And this is all in the name of making sure the homeless is as uncomfortable as possible. This is worth it to somebody. To someone, this is worth it.
It's open space with no seats. That's hostile architecture. This is a 24-hour facility, and those most negatively impacted by hostile architectural design and policing were those who needed a place when it was cold out. But New York doesn't just limit hostile architecture to the inside of buildings. Back in the day, you could climb the steps. There are doors over here, but now look, they got it all roped off. It's just here looking pretty.
Do I remember people sitting there and just like chilling and relaxing? Or maybe I might be thinking of something else, but this is insane. Just the regular public stairs right outside the main train station. There's stairs that are very similar to this where people sit all the time, chilling, taking pictures, relaxing, eating, congregating, whatever they want to do on stairs that are just out in the public. This is nuts.
Another awkward place to sit. I feel like I'm a little close to the traffic here. And this is what happens if you try to lay down on it. Look, my shoulders and arms are falling off the side. What a bizarre way.
I mean, honestly, I know someone could make that work, especially, in a moment of desperateness, you could make that work. But it just goes to show how far they're willing to go to make sure that the homeless are uncomfortable. Instead of helping them, they just make sure that they don't have any kind of comforts or refuge or anything that will get them by the next hour, day. You can just see how far they're willing to go to do this. A lot of this stuff is by design, and it is on purpose.
So over here, we've got what seems to be an actual seat. This is definitely better than the awkward bench.
Now those seem pretty big, like for no reason. The seat back is definitely tall. I wonder what's going on with these now.
Also of note, this is a private park and it does close at a certain point. So it's not like Central Park where you should expect to be able to go in and leave at any point you want. Check out these hostile bleachers. Maybe it's modern, maybe it's futuristic, but it's not exactly comfortable.
Like I said, those don't look comfortable to people who are used to having more comfortable things than that, but somebody could make that work. So do I know what should be done? No. I don't have the answers. I just know that ignoring it won't solve the problem. Maybe a shift in perspective instead of shaming or making it even more difficult or criminalizing homelessness. Maybe investing in methods or policies that focus on lifting people up, not pushing them further down in such a strong capitalist society.
Hostile architecture like this, right?
It's disgusting.
And I think this is the most cruel park in New York because this granite gets so cold just sitting on it.
Absolutely.
Made me freeze my butt off. And look at how high the ridges are.
Oh, wow. I didn't see those at first. I didn't know they had those little planks, sharp, thin planks sitting on those. I was just about to say that maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Like most homeless in the winter are bundled up with as much stuff as they can get, right? Laying on that, even though it's cold, is still better than laying down in the wet snow or the bare snow. So they could make something like that work, like I said in some of the other things, but it would make it tougher with those sharp planks, those little wedges sticking up out of that thing like that.
And I guess these awful benches, I guess they do deter, but is that really how we want to build things? Should we build things in New York in a way that maybe doesn't lower everyone's standard of living?
The criminalization of homelessness in America is a complex issue. I know this. We all know this. It's complex anywhere, but that doesn't mean it ever stops demanding attention. We've seen in other countries that there are effective ways to address this problem with compassion and practical solutions. It's time for a change. It's time for shift. It's time for policies that truly help those in need. Thanks for watching the video. Talk to you guys in the next one.
This has been called the staircase approach, because the homeless person is basically expected to gradually move up through different levels. They are expected to stop taking drugs, undergo mental health treatments, and if they make progress, they can move on, with the permanent housing as a final reward.